The Splinter Cell franchise has been around for about 15 years now and has had numerous installments throughout the years. However, as with most decade-old franchises, Splinter Cell has fallen into obscurity. It is, as far as the gaming industry is concerned, a successful franchise overall. No game in the series was ever reviewed badly by the gaming press, although certain entries did cause controversy and a rather significant rift in the community. Its origin story and how it got a famous novelist seal of approval is an interesting tale to tell. Ubisoft Montreal was founded in 1997. Despite being a video game development studio, nobody working in it initially knew how to make games. Speaking to IGN, Ubisoft Montreal CEO Yannis Malad said, "The founding myth of this studio is that we took a bunch of young people, we gave them PCs and we said make games. They were absolutely not game developers at the time. They didn't know how to make a game whatsoever, at all. They got the foot in the door developing Disney-themed games for kids until they earned enough budget and experience to create their own original IP. The Drift was supposed to be a hyper-innovative third-person shooter set in a fragmented world, with major cities now being suspended in the sky. The game, however, never left the prototyping stage, as nobody felt confident enough that it could be turned into an actual game. Around that time, Ubisoft purchased Red Storm Entertainment, a video game studio founded by none other than the late Tom Clancy. Wanting to make a game worthy of the Clancy moniker, the Canadian studio redesigned some of the elements in the Drift and repurposed them to fit a more contemporary role. This time, the game they were developing was about a top-secret NSA division. The agents working in it are living ghosts. Even though Tom Clancy had no direct involvement in the production of the game, every artistic decision had to get his approval, something that was tricky to do when it came to the iconic headgear the protagonist would use. Even though trifocal goggles have been developed and are in use today, for 2002, the goggles design was too unrealistic. He was ultimately convinced, as the design will help gameplay and the protagonist could instantly change between thermal and night vision. Those three green lights that give the player's position away, yet inexplicably no enemy can detect, have become the series' iconic trademark. I have no name, and this is Splinter Cell. The player assumes the role of Sam Fisher. Not a lot is known about the character from just playing the game. The 2004 novel, simply named Splinter Cell, penned by Raymond Benson under the pseudonym David Michaels, flashes Sam Fisher in greater detail, although the book has absolutely no connection to the events in the video game. All the game tells us is that Sam is a low-key badass and he's got experience in this kind of work. Sam's voice actor Michael Ironside was unhappy with the script that was handed to him, and rightfully so. Sam Fisher was monotone, a soldier that his superiors will send across the globe and hear nothing more out of him than a yes sir, not a like your average first-person shooter grunt. Thankfully, in the final product, Sam Fisher's personality has opportunities to shine. Those occasions are rare indeed, but their scarcity is what makes them so unique and memorable. He is loyal to the bone and rarely complains, but he will allow his dark sense of humor to surface from time to time, either to let his superiors know that he is unhappy or to intimidate his victims.
I need you to understand that we never talked.
I understand.
Good. Convince me we never talked.
If anybody finds out, Grinko will murder me.
And you're frightened of Grinko.
God, yes!
First you have to give me the key.
That wasn't the deal I made with the woman on the phone.
Listen, do I come to your job and tell you how to murder civilians?
What?
No. So don't come to my job and tell me how to do mine. The feds are on their way or here already. You're gonna be fine. You can give me the key or I can take it.
That wasn't the deal.
You're working from a very limited phrase book. Listen, just give me the key. I'm tired and I hate making people scream. It gets me down.
Here.
Thanks. And until the feds get here, find a better hiding place. I haven't been in the field in years.
Sure. But tradecraft is something you don't forget. It's like riding a bike.
Or wearing high heels.
Good Lord, Fisher. That's General Kong Ferrong.
Good Lord. Who's that?
There's more to the Sam Fisher character. His past as a Navy SEAL, his previous spy work, his daughter and absent wife. These are some of the things that future games in the franchise will touch upon. However, in Sam's debut in the industry, none of these matter. Sam's record as a professional soldier is mentioned in passing and only helps convince a player that Sam is indeed a badass. His daughter appears in some cinematics, Asking her father what he is up to and receiving the obvious "can't tell you, honey, it's classified." Fisher's daughter, Sarah, will play a major role in the development of our protagonist as a character later on. As far as Splinter Cell is concerned, however, none of that really matters right now. You've got an international crisis to de-escalate, we don't have any time for that pesky character development. There is valid criticism to be found in saying that while the nature of the conflict in the game changes, the characters stay absolutely the same. Standard writing conventions will see the protagonist gain a new outlook on things, maybe change the way he operates from now on, given the extremely sensitive nature of his work and the impact a single death can have on the global geopolitical map. But no, none of that can be found here. The story is driven by the events, a story that can be best summarized as a go there, do that, we have new information, go there and do that, rinse and repeat until a conclusion can be reached. The developers knew what they were doing, however. The Tom Clancy name will stick around for a number of future projects, so inserting characters into the lore to use them in later installments seems to have been the idea early on. The story is delivered mainly through dialogue, reading notes and emails during missions, and through a television broadcast in between missions. It is important to note here that the Windows version of the game closely resembles the Xbox one, in that the exposition is delivered through Spartan means. Cinematics are almost entirely restricted to mid-level transitions, and the characters when conversing show little to no animation. The PS2 version, on the other hand, raised the bar in this department, as it included way more complex and lengthier pre-render movies to set the scenes, whereas the Xbox and PC versions merely relied more on in-game cutscenes and dialogue. Despite the differences in the different versions, the player is treated the same way when it comes to the events of the game. Sam Fisher is part of Third Echelon, an NSA division tasked with sending in a lone operative to retrieve information otherwise unobtainable by hacking. Officially, Third Echelon does not exist. When compromised, the USA will deny the existence of such a Splinter Cell. Sam Fisher, should he be captured during a mission, is as good as dead. Of course, he doesn't strike me as the type one could easily intimidate and interrogate, but the NSA wants to have all bases covered, just in case. As a result, Colonel Irving Lambert, Sam's commanding officer and one of the voices who will accompany Fisher in his dangerous missions, will not divulge unnecessary information to him. This happens multiple times throughout the game. Sam will ask questions about stuff, only to have Lambert remind him that he is on a need-to-know basis.
Are we working with the CIA's cooperation?
Blaustein is outfitted with subdermals just like yours. That'll be your best lead to find him.
You didn't answer my question.
We'll tell you what you need to know.
Not only is this thematically appropriate, but also kind of brilliant. But keeping the player ignorant on the whole story incentivizes them to pay closer attention to the news broadcasts, to seek out and read emails during missions, and to overhear NPCs when they are talking. That way, the player can connect the dots and get everything out of the story. That being said, however, the plot is nothing to write home about. It is your average political thriller in which evil Eastern men are causing mischief and the good US of A is there to save everyone. There are no intricate plotlines, no grandiose villains with a twisted vision for how the world should be, no moral dilemmas and no debate on how the ends justify the means. The Georgian president, Compay Nicolaides, who has seized power through devious means, is waging a war with neighboring Azerbaijan. It's a war that no one knew about because of some sophisticated magical communications thingy that somehow has helped keep the war a secret. However, since Sam Fisher uncovered the conspiracy while investigating the disappearance of two CIA agents, Nicolaides flees into hiding. He launches a series of cyber attacks against the USA and tries to spark World War III by pitting China and the States against one another because of some fabricated misunderstanding. To top it all off, a nuclear device is snuck inside the US, Nicolaides being the only one with a detonation code. It is unsure how World War III will help Georgia with anything. All I am able to understand from the plot is that Nicolaides is a dangerous man, with dangerous friends and equally dangerous plans. What he does lack is a goal. Unless you want to consider millions of needless deaths as a goal, Nicolaides' plan lacks a payoff. We do not understand what he stands to gain from all this. All he is, to the best of my understanding, is a typical America-hating dictator whose sole motivation is to destroy the USA. Nicolaides is playing the part of the post-9/11 evil man, so common in media produced in the Western world after that terrible day. Splinter Cell was originally released on November 2002 and is a third-person action stealth game. While the Japanese counterpart that Ubisoft Montreal was tasked to destroy, Metal Gear Solid 2, relied on line of sight and cardboard boxes for its stealth, Splinter Cell adopts Thief's brand of hiding from enemies. That is, sticking to the shadows and minimizing exposure as much as humanly possible. While maintaining distance from enemies and hiding behind obstacles is of course important, one can hide in plain sight simply by staying crouched in darkness. Sound also plays a big part in stealth. While some suit will inform the player how visible he is, there is no such tool for how loud he is. That is left up to player experimentation. Different floors will produce different sounds when walked upon, and things such as shattered glass or water will quite predictably make sneaking around much harder. Since there is no audio measuring mechanic, there won't be one until the third game in the series, what I'm about to say may be inaccurate, but the way I see it, enemies will only react to noises that are louder than the environmental white noise they are in. You need to move at a snail's pace to approach someone in a quiet street, but inside a noisy engine room or when nearby NPCs are engaged in a firefight, you will be allowed a quick dash towards your target before he has a chance to become aware of you. In my personal experience, sound wasn't the biggest hurdle to overcome. Figuring out which areas were dark was the tricky part. This took me a while to figure out. Obviously, if a corner looks dark enough, it probably is safe to hide in. Except when it isn't. Sometimes light is shining directly on the ground but shadows are still being cast, leading the player to believe they are invisible when in reality they are anything but. Not only that, light coming from searchlights or other sources in the game just didn't show up for my playthrough, causing quite a few infuriating quick loads until I realized what was up. The game is ancient, no doubt about that. It's clear that my machine isn't cooperating fully with the game. I should however be thankful that the only problems I encountered were a few graphical bugs. Others trying out the game on their high-end rigs may not be that lucky. As it stands, I will contribute this flaw not to the designers of the game, but to my PC. That does not mean, however, that the lighting mechanics are always consistent, even when hardware problems do not exist. Even the original Xbox version, a version I will assume is running perfectly on that piece of hardware, suffered from the same problem. That is, areas the human eye will consider brightly lit, but the light meter on the SAM suit and the AI considers darkness. As a result, in some areas of the game, some trial and error is required to test what is considered dark and what is not. An example of such a conundrum can be found on the old refinery level. The sun has yet to set, and the rig can be described as pretty well lit in most of the times. Not according to the game's logic, though. Some indoor areas are also similarly affected by this. As I've said, trial and error is crucial in navigating these parts, something infinitely easier to do on the PC version thanks to quick saves. The console player needed to rely on checkpoints, meaning a single mistake could set the player back 5 or more minutes of gameplay. Navigating the environment was pretty easy with a mouse and keyboard combo. The developers also dealt with a lack of an analog stick by relegating the task of changing the player speed to the mouse wheel. Once my brain became accustomed to the fact that the default jump key is shift and you can interact with the spacebar, two things I should have remapped early on in retrospect, I had no problems with how the game controlled. Sam can change between 5 different movement speeds, with the highest one of course being the loudest. A cheeky gameplay exploit can be found when Sam moves forward and left or right, and as a result he moves faster than usual, a common thing game designers overlook. If you move at the x coordinate by a value of 5, and you move at the y coordinate by a value of 5 and you input both of these movements at once, your total speed is 10. For that reason, you will watch me quite frequently try and approach enemies from the back, moving diagonally at them and tilting the camera to one side to maintain forward movement. Moreover, Sam can climb ladders, hang from pipes, see me across ledges, put his back against a wall and shoot from the corner, and do a combat roll, a maneuver which is quiet and allows Sam to pass through flames unharmed. The trickiest move to pull off is the wall jump. Sam's idea of a parkour move is to position himself next to a wall, jump, and then kick the wall to gain diagonal momentum upwards to reach an otherwise inaccessible ledge. I say tricky because it requires excellent precision to pull off successfully. This technique flat out does not work with some walls, and other times Sam will pull it off but fail to grab the ledge, leading to some hilarious fails and noisy falls. Place Sam in a narrow corridor and jump a third time, and Sam will perform the infamous split jump, an equally cool and useless ability. This can be pulled off in a handful of places throughout the game, and arguably only 1 or 2 of these are necessary to remain undetected.
I don't understand.
Sam can shoot from this position, but if he is detected, he'll be a sitting duck, and since he'll need to jump down to relocate, the player need not bother with this technique and might even forget it exists. Manhandling over waist-high object is equally risky. Sometimes you succeed, other times you just fall to one side, alerting everyone to your presence because you didn't have time to crouch in midair and prepare for a silent drop. Truth be told, these inadequacies with Fisher's moveset are a bit annoying, but I shouldn't give you the impression that they are game-breaking. They are rare problems. Most of the time the controls work very well. Yes, they are considered clunky and rudimentary by today's standards, but given the technology that was available at that time, creating a third-person game with controls that worked 90% of the time was a neat accomplishment. And the fact that almost none of these actions are context-sensitive is all the more impressive. Sam's tools of the trade are not limited to his body, of course. He can lockpick doors the traditional way, picking the tumblers individually, or use a disposable lockpick that gets the job done much faster. Use an optic cable to pick behind doors, and use other miscellaneous throwable items like explosive grenades, flares, or bottles and soda cans that litter the environment. Medkits can also be carried and instantly used to heal the player. Complementing Sam's inventory are a camera jammer that you constantly have to point at the camera you want to keep disabled. A tool I almost never used, since cameras can't see you in the dark and it's much easier to just shoot them out anyway. And a laser mic, used to intercept and record conversations during critical in-game moments. Other than those, Sam comes equipped with a silenced pistol, loosely modeled after the FN57, and the SC-20K, which closely resembles the FN F2000. Sam's rifle will become available to him after he retrieves it at the CIA headquarters, and comes with an accessory grenade launcher. This modular weapon design is ripped directly from the Rift, as the designers had already had an idea about a gun that launches other gadgets, and it's amazing how they figured out a way to ground this concept in reality. Sam can fit ring-shaped projectiles into the launcher. Managing a headshot with one of these will knock an enemy unconscious. If the player misses the head, the enemy will be left dazed, allowing the player enough time to approach him and finish the job up close, or knock him out by firing a second ring. Sticky shockers also work in the same way. However, they are much more useful as they can knock enemies down irregardless of where the projectile hits them, and can also electrocute a group of enemies if they are standing in water. Sticky cameras can be fired on the walls and allow Sam to survey the field. The diversion cams are an alternative to these, as they sacrifice night and thermal vision modes with a loudspeaker and a gas canister, as the player can attract the enemies close to the camera and unleash a knockout gas. What I find extremely interesting is the game's attention to the little details. Let's take the AC-20K for example. The F2000, which it is based upon, is a unique looking weapon that is also quirky in the fact that when the user fires the gun, the spent cartridge isn't immediately ejected. The cartridges are collected close to the ejection port, and when 5 of them are collected and the user shoots again, only then does the gun start spitting out the old casings one by one. This is simulated in the game, the only difference being that Sam's weapon only holds 3 cartridges. This attention to detail does not provide any gameplay benefit, no one had to do it, and it only costs time for a programmer to insert this behavior in the game. While I may be talking out of my butt here, it may be that a worried and meticulous Tom Clancy was being informed on the game's progress, and when it came to the development team showing him the kind of weaponry Sam Fisher would use, Clancy nodded and then reminded the team to make sure they squeeze every detail into the guns they possibly can. This is not limited to the weaponry, however. Fire extinguishers can be shot and the content will make the enemies cough during a firefight. Glass bottles can incapacitate enemies if they land directly on an enemy's head, and if they can see the bottle in midair, they will investigate the place where it came from and not the place where it landed. Using thermal vision, the player can watch the heat of a dead body slowly be dispersed until it finally grows cold. Fingerprints on keypads will leave a heat signature, and that is an actual game mechanic as well. In some missions, you will need to use this technique to figure out the password to a door after a guard who knows the said password uses the keypad. Speaking of thermal vision, some materials are so thin that enemies will be visible through them, giving the player an edge during combat. I bet there are some stuff that I am currently forgetting, or possibly haven't even noticed to begin with, but it just goes to show the remarkable attention to detail that has gone into this game. What really is sad, however, is that the rest of the game rarely challenges the player with anything but the core gameplay loop of staying in the shadows, dispatching enemies when necessary, hiding the bodies and interact with the objective, which may simply be reaching a certain place, interrogating a key NPC, forcing a colonel to open a door with a retinal scanner on it, or hacking a PC just by pressing the spacebar next to it. Guards behave predictably. They have set patrol routes, they will converse with their fellow co-workers and investigate noises. When they spot you, they will either run to a wall-mounted alarm panel or shoot you, alerting other enemies who will do the same. This doesn't mean that there is anything wrong with the main loop of the game. In and of itself, it is fun. But there are sequences in the game where something unpredictable happens, and the player needs to react quickly and intelligently. I am not talking about emergent gameplay opportunities where a guard may sneak up on the player due to the latter's absent-mindedness, but scripted events that come as a surprise to new players. Early on in the game, while Sam is hacking into a computer, the intrusion is detected and a group of soldiers rush the office Sam is in. The player has two choices. If they have any spare grenades and full health, they may choose to stand their ground and fight off the enemy squad. More sneaky players will choose to hang from the window from which they came in a few moments ago. They will be vulnerable, but will ultimately go unnoticed. It's the seconds of vulnerability and worrying whether Sam will be spotted that really sell this scene. In the meat factory, white mist will surround the freezing rooms. Visibility is abysmal, so the players will need to rely on the thermal vision to detect enemies. In the last mission in the Georgian presidential palace, I was struggling with a lock and to my surprise, the lights in the room are turned on and guards enter searching for me, forcing me to cancel the lockpicking minigame, something I never had to do previously in the game, and seek cover. In the same level, while Sam is chokeholding the game's antagonist, he is ambushed by Georgian special forces. While Nikolaj is bargaining a deal to exchange the detonation codes to a nuclear device for his life, the third echelon team is planning a temporary blackout, giving Sam a few moments to seek cover and escape certain death by evening the odds.
Don't talk, Fisher. We're arranging for a blackout in 5 seconds. Make the most of it.
Give us the key to the Ark. You can hand it to me, or I can take it from your corpse. You have 5 seconds to decide. 4 seconds. 3, 2...
Show yourself!
Give yourself up!
It's moments like this that throw the player off balance and expect them to use their wits to overcome a new challenge. True, the experience can be validated by the use of safe scamming, as compensating for a failed attempt is easy, and thus the player has no need to pay special attention to anything. But my position still stands. The game needed more of these sequences to break the rather predictable flow of the game. Unpredictability isn't Splinter Cell's strong suit. The locations may change, the objectives may change, the mission parameters can change, sometimes multiple times during a mission, but the game will rarely require the player to adapt his playstyle. Sticking to the shadows is always the #1 priority. Dispatching the guards will depend on whether there is a kill or alarm restriction mandate in place. Obviously, if there is such a limitation, then knocking guards out with a gadget fired off the SC-20K, hitting them from behind or simply avoiding them is the only solution. When there is none, however, it's hunting season for Sam. The newer generation Splinter Cell games have come under fire for this exact reason. In those games, Splinter Cell enthusiasts will tell you Sam Fisher is all too keen on killing enemies, whereas in the original games, you were following a much more pacifist route to solving the problem. While I do respect this position and agree that the latest Splinter Cell games have crucial flaws, I see statements like this to be blatantly false, probably a mix of nostalgia and contempt for the casualification of an inherently hardcore genre of game. Stealth games have suffered from this issue from their inception. How does one convince the player not to use the tools they are given and adopt a non-violent playstyle? Is such a thing even possible? Or better yet, do we have valid reasons to ask this question? Modern stealth games such as Dishonored, Metal Gear Solid 5, etc. give the players a plethora of weapons and abilities and then urge them not to use them at all, for one reason or another. In Dishonored, for example, killing enemies will put you ever closer to the bad ending. In Metal Gear Solid 5, if you cause enough chaos, the enemy will be even more prepared and tough the next time you deploy. The player, however, will disregard this warning because they simply want to have fun. Unless they are after an achievement that involves a no-kill run, they will use a mix of stealth and basic fuck shit up strategies, wherever and whenever they see fit. Modern stealth games nowadays have protagonists that are vulnerable enough not to become Terminator-like killing machines, but not too vulnerable, so that they are able to survive small skirmishes with enemy forces. It is an inevitability that most players will at some point during the mission either mess something up, or become impatient and use force to eliminate an obstacle. The same is true about the original Splinter Cell. When it was permitted, I would rather incapacitate or kill guards than wait 30 seconds until an opening appears and I slip undetected. It's not just impatience. The guard I may leave alive and undisturbed can always run into me later and cause complications. He will almost certainly make sneaking in further areas more difficult. Dispatching enemies is a good investment of time and resources. I was, of course, restricted to non-lethal takedowns when restrictions were in place. These no-kill, no-alarms allowed sequences are heavily frowned upon in games today, as they are considered cruel and negatively impact gameplay. I am mostly in agreement with this, but I will defend them in this case, as they make sense in the setting of the game. For instance, fatalities during the infiltration of the CIA HQ are unacceptable and will lead to a mission failure should the rule be broken. This is understandable, along with civilian casualties, the elimination of NPCs critical to the plot, and the murder of enemy troops when doing so will cause a diplomatic nightmare. Sounding an alarm at the wrong time in the wrong place will create horrendous side effects as far as the situation is concerned, and it will work against the game and the geopolitical realism it strives to create if the player triggered alarms left and right, when everyone keeps going on about the necessity for stealth. When no restrictions on death applied during missions, I found myself actively thinking about my use of violence. The game uses the term fifth freedom. President Franklin D. Roosevelt proposed and defined the 4 fundamental freedoms a human ought to enjoy: freedom of speech, freedom from want, freedom of worship, and freedom from fear. This fictional fifth freedom is sometimes granted to a Splinter Cell operative, effectively giving them license to become the most vile, misanthropic criminal they need to be in order to complete their mission. They can kill, capture, torture, and intimidate without any restriction. All that matters is the elimination of the enemy that threatens the 4 other core freedoms, when the fifth freedom will be revoked and the operative will again comply to ethical and humanitarian frameworks. In short, when the fifth freedom is issued, go ahead and kill everyone you want. Be that as it may, I found myself actively evaluating the human lives I was about to take. When it came to Georgian police officers, I was more keen on incapacitating them with punches at the back of the head or airfoil rings launched from my rifle. They were standing in my way, but I considered it highly immoral to take their lives. They are much like Sam Fisher after all, people living their lives while in service to their country. In my mind, to kill a police officer will be to kill a fellow Splinter Cell agent. When it came to the gangsters and the mercenaries allying themselves with international terrorists, all bets were off. I didn't see their murder as unethical, rather I saw it as a matter of moral duty to kill or to at least knock them unconscious. The thugs assaulting Kalinatek, a company operating on American soil, I took extra care in eliminating. Any soldiers I leave alive will pose a serious threat to the police officers who will inevitably come and apprehend him. Therefore, I had to take them out, make sure they will never hurt anyone else ever again. The world is surely a better place with them dead. The first time you embark on a mission in Myanmar, the Chinese soldiers there are off limits. Killing even a single one will be a provocation of war. When Third Echelon finds out that a corrupt Chinese general has allied with a fugitive Georgian President Nicolaj, Sam Fisher is issued the fifth freedom. When it came to me, however, the ethical lines became exceptionally blurry. Much like Sam and the aforementioned police officers, the Chinese soldiers were servicemen as well. They were simultaneously taking orders from a corrupt leader. The correct solution to this dilemma is a very difficult one to find. Needless to say, Sam Fisher will not stick around to see the results of his violent behavior. My thoughts on the ethical implications of my actions in-game are but a mere distraction. The game doesn't really care about what I think about me killing a mercenary or a Chinese soldier. It is important for me though that Splinter Cell engaged with me in such a way that I had these kinds of thoughts. It would have been amazing to see the game have its protagonist change based on how liberal he was with his use of lethal force. A stoic and courageous Sam could be heard with unique voice lines at the end of the game, as he struggles to preserve life whenever possible. However, a Sam Fisher who will kill without hesitation will be more cynical, more dark and sinister, and that will be communicated to the player through the way he speaks. We have already established, however, that there is no character development to be found in this game. Still, I love the fact that Splinter Cell made me consider matters regarding the application of lethal force and its moral implications. I can only imagine a game where the amount of violence and its ethical justification will change the course of the plot and how the main characters behave, but not in a boring and predictable binary like Mass Effect Paragon versus Renegade system. Alas, that is a discussion for another video. After Splinter Cell was released, it garnered critical acclaim and was a commercial hit as well. Ubisoft Montreal immediately started production on a new game in the series, however that one will be released until 2005. It is Ubisoft Shanghai's time to shine in the meantime. It's 2004 and Pandora Tomorrow is released to positive reception. It may have been hot back then, but nowadays it's another story altogether. As of writing this, there is no way to purchase the PC version of this game. You can either purchase the Splinter Cell HD Trilogy pack for the PlayStation 3, or track down an old second-hand copy. It's not available on Steam, GOG, or even the Uplay store. I have found some explanations for this, the most likely one being that Pandora Tomorrow has not been optimized for modern systems, as shadows will not render properly, especially on Nvidia cards. Whatever the case may be, I didn't have any significant problems trying to run the game. My problems with the title run elsewhere. The press adored this game, it scores ranging from good to all-time classic from various outlets. I find this reception extremely puzzling and outright unjustified. Let's get into more details. We'll start with the positives first. Pandora Tomorrow didn't set out to innovate, instead choosing to fix some stuff wrong with the first game. Sam's overall speed seems to have increased, he's a little bit more agile this time around. Not a major departure from the previous game, but the movement felt a tad more fluid and that goes a long way. A few new moves have been added to his repertoire. The first one is a so-called SWAT turn, where Sam will traverse from one piece of cover to the next, while also being invisible for the duration of the animation. Instead of a split jump, Sam now does a half split jump. It's not all that different, you still have to awkwardly position yourself next to a wall and jump to that position, but now the maneuver has more utility to it because Sam can jump even higher and climb nearby ledges. The protagonist can now use his pistol while hanging from a pipe even when hugging it, holding the pipe with his feet and shooting upside down, simultaneously utilizing the new laser sight for his pistol. The accuracy and recoil control for Sam's guns is still laughable given the man's experience with firearms. That is of course a conscious design choice, as the developers want to discourage run and gun gameplay as much as possible. The laser sight at least gives the player clear indication where the shot will land, instead of a crosshairs that vaguely show where the bullet might go. The laser can be detected, however, especially when you shine it directly on an enemy's eyes. Whistling has been added as well to distract enemies, a thing that I used only once and then completely forgot about it as I found it inconvenient. The goggles now have binoculars installed in them and Sam can climb waist-high objects automatically and no longer has to clumsily try and jump on them. Other than that, the single-player mode Pandora Tomorrow provides is more of the same. Though it will not convince people who didn't like the first game in the series, it will not deviate far from what the original did right. Multiplayer though is another matter entirely. This is the only truly innovative part of the game. For those of you who don't know, the multiplayer mode in the Splinter Cell games is unconventional and asymmetric, pitting one team of mercenaries who play a typical first-person shooter against a spy team, which consists of players playing an unarmed and more agile version of Sam Fisher. It's a game of hide and seek. The spies need to sneak into buildings and carry out objectives, and the mercenaries have to pick them out from the darkness and try to stop them. It really bugs me that we no longer have a viable means of playing the multiplayer for this game. The servers have been brought down by Ubisoft ages ago. For it to work, players will need to get together, set up a VPN and pray to their favorite god that no version incompatibility occurs. This is sadly going to become a running theme for this video. 4 games in the series have competitive multiplayer modes, but testing out the multiplayer will only be feasible for the latest game in the series, Blacklist, and that is if anyone is playing that one. But we'll get to that when we get to that. As I've said, excluding the multiplayer, Pandora Tomorrow offers more of the same slow-paced, traditional stealth gameplay that made the original Splinter Cell a hit. The press seemed to like it, but I was not all that impressed. Personally, I found it weaker than the original in a number of ways. When it comes to setting up the action and the set pieces, it falls way behind the original in ways that are way too evident for anyone who has played the original to miss. Just to show you that I'm not unjustly picking on this game, I will comment it on a few things it does right. Firstly, the train level. It is short, tense, and nothing short of brilliant. Sam infiltrates the fast-moving locomotive from the roof. In order to avoid detection, Sam will hang from beneath a car, inches above the ground. In one instance, he will hang from the side of the car, hanging on for dear life when another train approaches from the opposite direction. A crucial NPC needs to be identified, but no one knows what he looks like. Thankfully, he has a false leg, meaning that when you look at the character through thermal vision, his leg is not going to light up. Exfiltrating the area is equally cinematic and exciting. Another great sequence can be found in the first level, when Sam reaches a courtyard that is guarded by a sniper wearing night vision goggles while an automated spotlight is lighting up parts of the courtyard. The way to solve this conundrum and remain undetected is to completely unlearn everything you have learned up until this moment and flip the game's formula on its head. You have to stay in the spotlight and follow the light around until you reach the opposite end of the courtyard, since the sniper cannot look directly at the light. There are a few more brilliant moments like this in the game, like for example the level in Jerusalem. Sam Fisher is following an Israeli agent to the terrorist hideout to secure a dangerous biological weapon. Here's what happens.
You ready? We're stirring up a nest of vipers here.
You want to come inside?
Not on your life.
Fisher, we need Dahlia Tal dead. Kill her. Don't think, just do it.
Tell me what I just did, Lambert.
The right thing. Hard work, but it had to happen.
Shinbet wasn't playing a straight game.
Killing unarmed women seems mighty close to terrorism.
Shut up, Fisher. Leave the ethics to us. Brunton, sign off.
Had this game been more of that, I wouldn't be so negative. I'm not claiming that these moments should compose the entirety of the game. They are there to surprise the player and deliver a hard-hitting experience that will forever be memorable. They are there to complement the rest of the game. That being said, the rest of the game isn't all that great. I've already said that it's not a great departure from the original Splinter Cell. It's still slow and methodical sneaking, dispatching enemies, lethally when permitted, hiding their bodies and trying to reach the end of the level. The main gameplay loop is much weaker, however. In the original game, looking for passcodes on computers, interrogating enemies or eavesdropping on conversations was crucial. In Pandora Tomorrow, the number of times you have to use a keypad or interrogate an enemy for sensitive information can be counted on the fingers of your hand. True, in the original game, killing a guard who can unlock a retinal scanner and insta-failing the mission as a result, or missing a code for a door which you are going to have to go back and look for, is not very fun. But at the very least, it provides new obstacles to the player, requiring special attention to overcome. Since there is very little of that here, the only obstacle that can be found in Pandora Tomorrow are the enemy guards. That's it. You can kill them when you are allowed to, which is the case 90% of the time, and reach the next checkpoint, when you are going to repeat the same thing. This time around, when you trigger an alarm, guards in areas you are about to visit will wear more protective gear, like bulletproof vests and helmets, further discouraging sloppy gameplay. It's 3 alerts, however, and the mission is over, for some reason that is not explained at all. There are some levels that take place in jungles with heavy foliage, but sneaking around still works on a light, dark system. Why not introduce a simplistic camouflage system to add variety to a game that desperately needs it? Sadly, these levels are just as linear as the others in the game. The problem that plagued the first game followed me on this one as well. Trying to guess if a place on the ground is dark or is really brighter than the sun but just looks dark was a constant frustration. Was it a lack of backwards compatibility resulting in glitchy graphics or bad game design? My guess is a combination of both. Nevertheless, my time playing the game was a significantly worse one. Thankfully, quick saves were there to save the day. Is the story any better? No. It's yet another terrorist planning on teaching the USA a lesson about its evil ways. This time, he plans on deploying a modified version of the smallpox virus. If the USA take him out or disrupt his plans for dominance in Indonesia, the virus will be released. If left undisturbed, his associates will receive the code word Pandora tomorrow, postponing the outbreak for another 24 hours. This time, however, the international villain has American help. The aforementioned one-legged character, Norman South, is a long-lost CIA asset. It turns out that he has fully committed himself to terrorism against his nation, which he saw as an acceptable way of seeking vengeance from the people that wronged him. This is a trend that will be repeated in future games in the series. It's not just evil foreigners that plan to cause chaos. This time, Americans are also joining in on the conspiracy for their own reasons. We will mention this trope when discussing other games in the franchise. In Pandora Tomorrow, though, I felt disappointed. The main antagonist, Sadono Suhadi, has clear motivations, and I like that. I criticized Nikolai's plan from the first game as being overly chaotic without any real benefit to himself. Sadono has prepared this biological weapon as an insurance policy against the United States. If he is left unharmed to carry on with his insurgency, millions of US civilians will be spared. He procured these weapons with the help of Norman South, who has his own pet peeves with America. I get that. It's not breaking any boundaries, it's not going to win any major storytelling awards, but it's a perfectly serviceable story, especially for this kind of game. What it lacks, much like the first game, is a great payoff. Crisis occurs, Sam Fisher is deployed, crisis is dealt with, roll the end credits. This game, at least, had an amazing opportunity to deliver such a payoff, but it missed it. The last level of the game takes place in Los Angeles International Airport, and Sam Fisher is looking for Norman South, as he is carrying the last smallpox container which he will detonate. Long story short, all the terrorists accompanying him are killed by Sam. Now it's the final confrontation between Sam and South, 2 more terrorists and the bomb. Sam Fisher will kill all of them, approach the bomb, and the ending cinematic will play, showing how the bomb is finally dealt with. End credits roll. That's it? I wondered. I went back to my last save game, and this time I made sure to leave Norman South alive. I tried to grab him from behind, interrogate him, and see if he had anything to say about his involvement in this crisis. As you can see from the footage yourself, it was not an easy firefight to win, as all 3 men are armed and have night vision as well. But I finally managed to capture him alive, and nothing. No prompt to interrogate him, no way to get him to talk, all I can do is knock him into the ground and finish the job. Needless to say, that was extremely disappointing. I felt cheated out of the proper ending to the story. What if Sam could force a confession out of South? How about a grand speech about the unethical actions of the United States, and how it always meddles in other people's affairs? This specific seed had been planted in the previous mission. Sam Fisher and fellow CIA agent have this to say on the matter.
It always shocks me how young he looks. Like a little kid compared to his face on television.
You honestly liked him?
No. Respect maybe, but I know he's a monster. He has a child's idea of war. Can't tell the difference between a citizen and a soldier. He thinks the whole world is a morally viable target.
There's only one nation on the planet fighting the whole world.
Huh. Whose side are you on?
You know I can't say that.
Yeah, I know.
There was a chance for some self-reflection, to come to the realization, okay, maybe we are pretty bad ourselves. Maybe Sam could convince South that his hatred for his government is justified, but attacking innocent civilians is absolutely not. Maybe have a secret ending where South is convinced to disarm the device and turn himself in. I will be totally okay to have this imaginary ending hidden, as only the most inquisitive and skilled players would access it. People like me who wanted to disarm South and talk to him will be rewarded for their time and effort. But no, disappointingly so. It's sad, a golden opportunity for something worthwhile was missed. Ultimately, is Pandora Tomorrow a bad game? No, it most certainly isn't. Is it a lazy, boring repeat of the original with a new coat of paint on it? Arguably yes. It does a few things correctly. The worst part is, in my opinion, that there aren't all that much to talk about. People remember great games. People remember horrible games. Mediocre games, they get to be forgotten. You might have a different opinion about this game than I do, and that's fine. However, I regard Pandora Tomorrow as the weakest game in the series. I'll stop picking on this game now. You can see I'm not a fan, and the longer I talk about it, the more bitter I get. Let's play something more fun, shall we? Many regard this one as the definitive game in the series and the best old-school Splinter Cell game. I can't disagree. Chaos Theory represents the very best these games have to offer. It is a flawed game, absolutely, but everything from the gameplay to the graphics, from the sound and level design to the writing is so close to perfection that the things that hold the game back are minuscule in comparison. Getting into Run was a bit of a hassle, to put it extremely mildly. It was working perfectly, save for the fact that the thermal vision from Sam's goggles just wouldn't work. Turns out it has something to do with AMD graphics cards. Downloading a fan-made patch resolved the issue, but it came with a cost. In large areas the frame rate will tank noticeably, and for whatever reason my recording software recorded the game upside down. Testing the game on the same rig, but with an older AMD GPU, thermal vision worked just fine. The rest of the game, not so much. It had a tendency to crash every time a level loaded, returning the graphics options back to their default state and refusing to launch again until I rebooted my PC. Turns out, if recording software is running in the background, like DxStory, Fraps or OBS, when the game tries to load a level, it will crash. You have to let the game load and then launch the recording program. When that patch was installed, however, this didn't occur. Hard to say what's causing this exactly, and this can only lead to more doubts about the game's longevity. In Chaos Theory, fortunately, Shadows rendered properly, relieving me of a lot of tedium. Despite its age, Chaos Theory still looks great. And it's not only the graphics that are great about this game. The core gameplay is exactly the same. It's still a game about the world's best spy, infiltrating enemy positions and resolving extremely sensitive international conflicts. Sam's moveset and kit have been altered a bit, but the changes aren't too radical. When it comes to the movement of the protagonist, it's pretty much the same. The SWAT turn and the wall jumps are gone. As for the iconic split jump, Sam will assume that position by more realistically running up a wall instead of jumping diagonally up. It's still a mostly useless move, as it can only be applied viably in a couple of places in the game. The most noticeable and at the same time simplest addition to his arsenal is a knife. Now the player can choose between punching an enemy unconscious or killing him instantly. Furthermore, the player can also attack enemies while hanging from a pipe above them or from a ledge below them. The pistol has seen one major change, in that the laser sight has been replaced with an alternative firing mode that launches an electromagnetic pulse on the device running on electricity, disabling it for a short period of time.
Tell me why we're out here again.
Boss needs to check all his DSL feeds. Make sure that
What was that?
I don't even know what that
The SC20K is also back, and the gadgets that can be fired off it are identical as in the previous titles. However, the launcher under the rifle can be replaced at any time during the mission with one alternative attachment. A foregrip that helps with accuracy, and a shotgun or a sniper rifle for close and long range combat respectively. Complementing the light meter is also an audiometer, a gadget that tracks the background noise levels and the noise Sam makes. A third vision mode has been added to Sam's goggles that can help detect devices running on electricity, and instead of normally picking a lock, Sam can simply bypass the lock by breaking it. It will create a lot of noise, plus if an enemy sees the broken door, he will call his friends to investigate. Once the door has been unlocked, you can open it as you normally would, or bashing it to knock out any unfortunate soul standing directly behind it.
currently 300 to behind.
Who broke the lights?
A hacking minigame has also been added to the game. If you cannot find the combination for a keypad, or lost the opportunity to use a guard to open a door locked by a retinal scanner, you can choose to hack these devices instead. All you have to do is pick the correct IP address from a list. A little display on the bottom right of the screen will periodically shift through combinations and will flash green if a correct number has been found. Locking down all 4 of these numbers, or making an educated guess to complete the hack is really easy. However, since the minigame doesn't freeze time, you need to make sure no one will interrupt you. Needless to say, failing a hacking attempt will result in an alarm being triggered. Some computers can also be hacked, which is necessary to complete side objectives and deactivate cameras or laser grids, and now Sam can hack this remotely through his binoculars, making the hack more difficult if he is really far away. You have probably detected a pattern here. There is a distinct binary in how you choose to do things, and every option has its pros and cons. Chaos Theory provides much greater variety in how you tackle obstacles, and there is no better map to showcase this than the bank, the third mission in the game. Up until this point, every level in the Splinter Cell games we have covered so far is linear and doesn't provide many alternative routes for the player to follow. This one is the exception to the rule. I'll try and be brief, even though this level in particular deserves its own video analysis, it's just that good. Third Echelon needs to extract vital intelligence from the bank, and to keep their cover intact, Sam Fisher will also need to steal bonds belonging to the French government. The infiltration and exfiltration points are the same. This means that the rest of the level is open for the player to explore. Well, I say open only in the metaphorical sense. Walking through the front door is ill-advised, so the only viable means of entry is to go to the side of the building and locate a way in from there. Once Sam rappels into the lobby, lasers turn on, which a player can deactivate easily by remotely tapping into a computer nearby and simply switching them off. From there on in, the player has more freedom to move about. A door locked by retinal scanner can be opened either by hacking it or by rudely awakening the snoozing guard and forcing him to open it for you. There are even more locked doors, either by keypad or a traditional mechanical lock, and bypassing this is entirely up to the player to figure out. If you are meticulous enough, snooping around in computers, you will come across the passwords for some of these doors, and if you pay close attention, you can even find and hack the terminal which shuts off all the cameras in the level. It's perhaps the most welcome addition to the game. In the previous titles, if you knocked out an enemy that could open a retinal scanner for you, it's game over. If you can't find the correct combination for a keypad, well, that's too bad. Chaos Theory does away with all these restrictions and deals with more of the problems that plagued its predecessors. Hiding bodies was necessary in the first games, thankfully not in all missions, but still. Obviously, if an enemy guard comes across a body, he will sound an alarm. However, even if you cleared the entire area of guards and left their bodies in plain sight, the alarm will still be triggered. See, the way those games worked is that when the player reached an invisible checkpoint, the game will scan the level for any bodies you didn't bother hiding, and if a single one was detected, it will raise an alarm. In certain cases, that became tedious as the constant need to hide bodies would stop the pace right in its tracks. And can you imagine if the game found a body you neglected to hide during a mission that did not allow for any alarms? Thankfully, Chaos Theory removes this feature. For an alarm to be raised over a body, it has to be detected by a guard during actual gameplay. Speaking of alarms, these gameplay limiting restrictions on kills and alarms are, for the most part, absent. Should the player accidentally kill an ally or a civilian, the game no longer ends. It will still let you know that you are a horrible monster, but at least you can continue your mission while drowning in your guilt.
National Guard was deployed into Manhattan about an hour ago.
I feel safer already.
Watch your fire, Sam. Those boys aren't expecting to see you and they'll attack on sight. Do not, I repeat, do not kill any of them.
I'll be careful.
Good. Sweet Jesus, Fisher. What did you do?
It was an accident.
We don't have room for accidents. Watch your fire.
Since there is much more freedom to move about, now every level has optional tasks that are there to provide extra challenge to those who want it. Apart from this and the main objectives, of course, the secondary objectives are also optional, and these, more often than not, are about locating information about a situation or a person. This can be completed by finding the necessary email, interrogating certain NPCs, or maybe eavesdropping a conversation. The interesting part is that these are sometimes linked to the main story. If Sam completes a secondary objective, the third echelon team will be more clued in about the situation. On the other hand, if Sam cannot complete the secondary objective, the game will continue like normal, but in the next mission, that particular objective will become primary. Even rarer, there are opportunities for Sam to complete certain actions, and these do not appear on any menu. Case in point, an American plane is shot down in Seoul, and Sam Fisher needs to navigate through a war zone to locate the plane and mark it, so that another plane destroys it. Once Sam finds the wreckage, Lambert will give him the order to retreat and mark it for destruction. However, Sam locates the two pilots who are unconscious. If you pick one up, Lambert will urge you to not bother with them, as they are not worth the effort. Sam, quite predictably, is sickened by the notion that you will leave these pilots to die. If you move their bodies away from the blast site, Lambert will acknowledge your good deed, but the game will not. There is no bonus for doing this. It can only hurt you, as moving the bodies away requires the player to sneak through 3 infantrymen and a 4th one who is manning a vehicle turret. And I'm okay with this. Doing the good thing isn't always the wise or easy choice. But the Sam Fisher I know wouldn't let these men to their fate, and I love the game for giving me the opportunity to discover this mini adventure. In relation to the previous games, Chaos Theory is quite lacking in cool and unpredictable moments like the one I described above. There aren't all that many instances where the player needs to adapt his playstyle, and the ones that do exist aren't all that exciting. Mission objectives may work a bit differently, but the game does not deviate from the tried and true formula. Shadows are a spy's best friend, and there are plenty to be found while playing Chaos Theory. Almost too many. It is really hard not to be in a really dark place for most of the game, since Sam now has a lot more ways of dealing with light sources. To compensate for this, guards can now detect the protagonist even if the light meter shows a relatively small value. Detect may not be the most accurate word. To describe it better, they are disturbed by a funny looking shadow and they move closer to investigate. They will walk fast towards the place where they saw something, and as they approach it, they will slow down significantly. If they have friends nearby, we'll call them to either set the place together or to simply alert them that there might be something dangerous nearby. Some guards will even pull out flashlights or flares to eliminate their surroundings. Lastly, if you have been teasing them consistently, they might start panicking and open fire in random directions. That's not to say that they are completely unpredictable, it's quite the opposite. However, this time around, the enemies have more ways of dealing with the player. In Splinter Cell 1 and 2, there were rare instances where guards will come equipped with night vision goggles or head-mounted flashlights. Because of more advanced AI, in Chaos Theory every guard is more dangerous, which is why players should simply leave them alone or not bother them all that much. And that is a very easy thing to do across all difficulty modes. Unless I'm terribly mistaken, all the difficulty does is dictate how much damage enemies deal to the player. I haven't been able to detect changes in their perception or how fast they react to stimuli. This leads me to my biggest gripe with Chaos Theory. It is a really easy game. Now that doesn't make it a bad game by any means. Chaos Theory does a great job of making the player feel like an ultimate badass, a modern day ninja, and I understand why the designers will include so many dark environments to facilitate gameplay. Even when the room the player is in isn't that dark, it's rare that there is a light source that can't be dealt with safely. When enemy guards are inspecting an area because they have seen Sam for a brief moment, they will focus on that spot intently, making it simple for the player to bypass them. Even when the enemies are using their own portable light sources, their light radius is unrealistically tiny, and it's almost comical how oblivious the enemies are. Staying invisible is all a matter of patience and careful planning. If you are a more combat-focused player, on the other hand, then the game will be more of a challenge for you, especially on expert difficulty. Gunplay is of course discouraged, but Chaos Theory provides a lot of options for loud and violent gameplay. For the first time in the series, Sam can switch shoulders when aiming with guns. In previous games, if you had to take cover and pick to the left, you had to expose your entire body before making eye contact with the enemy, and the soldier switching fixes that. The shotgun and sniper attachments for the main rifle also indicate that the developers wanted you to have a little bit more fun with the game. My personal favorite, the shotgun, is equal parts impractical and amazing, as it is loud but lethal, being capable of sending enemies flying across the room.
I thought I heard something for
Being loud and lethal just isn't my playstyle, but I can appreciate the extra toys given to the players who enjoy this type of playstyle, or those who just want to mess around. Even if I like the slow and methodical sneaking, I felt more restricted while playing Chaos Theory. In the previous games, the applications of lethal force will come at us with the question, is it really ethical for me to do this? The games didn't really care what I thought about murder, as long as I was allowed to kill, everything was okay. Not in Chaos Theory. At the end of every mission, you're given a rank ranging from 0 to 100, depending on the number of alarms raised, bodies found by guards, and optional missions completed. The game also deducts a few points off the final score for every kill, excluding the ones that are mandatory due to an objective. Two things I'd like to talk about. 1. Why does the game penalizes me for killing when I'm allowed to? And 2. Why do I care that the game cares? I'll tackle point number 1 first. I'm at a loss. To me, killing everyone you meet is way more dangerous. For one, while both a pistol and standard rifle are suppressed, they are not silent. If an enemy nearby hears the shot, he will raise an alarm. Stabbing an enemy is also louder than just punching him. So why would the game focus on taking points away for these more dangerous actions? Could it be that knocking enemies down is harder than just shooting them? That's not true. The AC-20K can launch non-lethal projectiles with relatively high accuracy, so that's not it. The only logical thing that springs to mind is that unconscious enemies can be found and revived, while dead ones, well, they can't be brought back. And that is the game's way of balancing things out, I guess. It's a crappy explanation, I know. Nevertheless, I should just play the game the way I want, and I shouldn't really care about the score the game gives me, right? Well, here's the thing. I can't easily ignore a bad rating. I understand a reduction in score if I get detected by cameras or trigger alarms, as those are pretty good indications that I mess something up big time. But when the game penalizes me for killing as well, there is a nagging feeling at the back of my mind that doing actions that move me away from a perfect rating are bad. A game that did a similar thing was Hitman Absolution. In that game, if you knocked an NPC unconscious, your score will go down, as if the game just didn't want you to remove guards from play. I hated it then and I hate it now. There is a compulsive part of my brain that would not allow me to kill, not because I might attract unwanted attention from enemies, not because it conflicts with my moral questioning meta minigame I have going on inside my mind. No, I don't kill anyone because I lose points. It's silly, I know. Can such a silly thing count as criticism against the game, especially since it's subjective? I don't think so. But it does bring me back to the point I raised earlier. Why would a game give you all the cool toys you need to have a great time, and then slap you with a 35% rating at the end? But, since it is a subjective pet peeve of mine, I won't complain any longer. Speaking of 100%, it's time to tackle the most disappointing thing about Splinter Cell Chaos Theory. The game not only comes with a competitive multiplayer mode like its predecessor, but also with a 2-player co-op campaign that runs parallel to some Fisher single-player campaigns story-wise. The thing is, it's extremely difficult to run either of these. For starters, there is no system to automatically connect you to other people wanting to play co-op, you have to invite them yourself. Not that that's going to work anytime soon, you most likely have to set up a VPN and play that way. The multiplayer on the other hand needs to launch through a different executable, and you cannot raise the resolution past 1600 by 1200 for some reason, whereas the main game is fully capable of running in full 1080p. Then there is the annoying mass acceleration that consists throughout the menus and the gameplay. Oh yeah, this one sort of runs. The only thing that you can play, however, is an offline tutorial for the spies that teaches you the fundamentals on movement, the objectives and the various security systems you will come across. You can also launch an empty server and run around the map, taking a look at all the fun you could be having if you manage to get a bunch of people in your private network and play together. Other than that, you can try registering for an online service that no longer exists. It's a damn shame these multiplayer modes have been lost to the ages. They're always gonna be there, it's just that the effort required in organizing a group and setting up the necessary tools, not to mention the probability that something will inexplicably not work, is just too much. I was not a big fan of the stories in the previous games, and the plot in Chaos Theory leaves me equally unamused. It doesn't deviate a lot from the stories told in previous games. However, for the biggest portion of the game, Chaos Theory doesn't have a clear antagonist. The true nature of the conflict and who's behind it all remains obscure until the very last mission in the game. The trope of the American helping mess everyone's day is back, and takes the form of Douglas Shetland. This is a character who first makes an appearance in Pandora tomorrow, both in-game and during some cinematics in between missions. In Chaos Theory, he starts out innocently enough, giving you some pointers during briefing and then conveniently disappearing. Douglas Shetland, it turns out, has a part in a conspiracy to bring about World War III. What does he have to gain from all this? I'll let him tell you himself.
It doesn't have to end like this, Sam.
No, but it does have to end.
On that we agree. We've been fighting their dirty little wars our entire lives, and where do we end up? Staring at each other down the barrels of our guns. Nothing has changed, Fisher. And it won't change by degrees. We have to tear it down and start over. It's the only way.
Your own little chaos theory, throw the world into war and hope that what comes out the other side is better.
It will be better. Because this war will change things, Sam. Every other war has been about keeping things the same, but the status quo doesn't work anymore. America's sick, Sam. She's dying. The politicians, the bureaucrats, the whispered backroom deals, it's all life support for a sick old lady who was dead a long time ago.
The only backroom deals that I've seen lately were made by you. You're a murderer and a war criminal.
Those are the only names the state has for the revolutionaries, Sam. You only become a hero after the war is over. You know the truth. The world is built from the bottom up, not the other way around. Honor, courage, fidelity. We don't inherit these things from the world, Sam. We build the world from them. I know you. You believe in these things more than any government. And I know that because of it, you wouldn't shoot an old friend.
You're right, Doug. I wouldn't shoot an old friend.
The plan is to destabilize things and hope that something better will take its place. Just from the main game alone, I cannot understand what his problems with the world are. Unlike Norman South, the American conspirator from the previous game, Shetland fared much better in life. What was it that pushed him over the edge? War, corruption, overly greedy and power-hungry bureaucrats? All I get is Shetland essentially saying, I want to fix stuff. Oh, I know, a new world war. It's not clear whether he wants to cause chaos so that he himself can take charge in this new world of his, or simply let someone else pick up the pieces. But one thing is clear. He wants things to change, and the only way to accomplish that is to have a shit ton of people dead. It's also painfully evident that the developers wanted this particular scene to carry a heavy emotional burden. You wouldn't shoot an old friend, says Shetland milliseconds before I shoot an old friend in his self-righteous face. The character of Douglas Shetland may have meant something for Sam Fisher. Lore-wise, these characters go way back. I would even go as far as to call them brothers. Had his character been more fleshed out during the series, his grandiose speech and the choice to put him down could have been an impactful one. But as far as the player is concerned, Shetland is just another villain. The decision to kill him is an easy one, and this sequence, despite looking really cool, falls flat on its face. Shetland's accomplice, on the other hand, has a clearer vision of what he wants. Admiral Toshiro Otomo is the head of Japan's Information Self-Defense Force, ISDF for short. As you may know, Japan's post-World War II constitution did not allow for a military that could operate outside of Japanese borders, and was there simply for defense and dealing with natural catastrophes. Admiral Otomo's plan was to conduct information warfare using technology he acquired from Douglas Shetland to plunge the entire Far East and the USA into war. When he uses the so-called chaos theory algorithms to hijack North Korean missiles and launch them against his nation, he's effectively trying to create just cause for Japan's rapid remilitarization and drag his country into a new world war. Keep in mind that chaos theory was released in 2005 and today the Japanese constitution has been amended and the military isn't nearly as toothless. Silly Admiral Otomo, had he waited a decade, his wish for a strong and formidable military presence will come true. But as far as the game is concerned, the story is yet again serviceable. There are no jaw-dropping moments to be found, no significant character development, no breathtaking plot twist one couldn't see coming a mile away. The only reaction the game can extract from you is a good hearty laugh. Chaos Theory has, hands down, the greatest and funniest dialogues in the entirety of the series. Have a listen. You can tell that whoever was writing the game had an absolute blast, and it succeeds in giving Sam Fisher an even greater personality.
Stay quiet and you might live.
What? Who?
Shut up. Lambert, I've got one.
Good job, Fisher. I'm gonna patch you through direct. Hold on.
Stay calm. This'll just take a sec.
Okay.
All right, Fisher. Go ahead.
I've got someone who wants to talk to you.
Roger. Ask him where they took John.
Where did you take Jung?
I don't know what you're talking about.
He's not answering. Should I kill him?
Negative, negative.
All right. They say I should kill you, so...
Wait! Okay! Jung, we moved him to a cyber cafe just off the fish market by the river.
Is that what you needed to know, guys?
Affirmative. Thanks a lot, sir. We owe you one.
Welcome to the team. You want to tell me what's going on, Lambert?
Sorry, Fisher, but you're getting too old for this kind of work.
Stop listening to Grim. If you go by her definition of old, you'd need to issue diapers with every set of goggles.
If I listen to you much longer, it'll be adult undergarments.
That was cruel.
Affirmative, Maria.
Maria Narcissa.
You're not trying to set me up on another blind date, I hope.
The Maria Narcissa is a boat.
So was the last girl you set me up with.
Fisher.
Sorry. Talk, but talk quietly.
I'll tell you anything. I'm the biggest coward you've ever met.
That's quite a claim.
I've already wet myself.
Well, then you've made the top 10. Where's Casey?
Somewhere at the far end. In the tea house, maybe.
All right. I think it's time for you to take a nap, then.
I'm such a coward. You should kill me anyway. I don't deserve to live.
You are pretty spineless, actually.
I'm so ashamed.
Shh. I'm not going to hurt you.
Who are you? Wait a minute. Is this a training exercise?
Damn. Support. This guy knows it's an exercise. Who let the cat out of the bag?
Huh. I knew it.
Roger that. Yeah. Okay. Give me a hand here, pal. Just play along. Name, rank, and number.
Corporal Stan Donlin, 2428996.
And you're not going to tell me anything else?
No, sir.
Good boy. All right, want me to move on to the next one? Yeah. Roger. Huh? Okay, I'll ask. Command wants to know how many are on the roof.
2 on the roof, sir. 2 more inbound in a chopper.
Thanks. Dismissed.
Stupid piece of junk.
That's half of the forged mail, Sam. 4 more to go.
Thanks. I've always found it hard to count past 3.
No need to be smarmy, Sam.
President?
Last but not least, let's talk about the chaos theory concept. It's not just a cool title, it's actual science. The bastion of humanity's knowledge, Wikipedia, defines chaos theory as a branch of mathematics focused on the behavior of dynamical systems that are highly sensitive to initial conditions. Chaos theory has applications in a multitude of disciplines, besides mathematics, and a quick Google search shows me that it can also apply to military operations. In the game, the chaos theory algorithms are a product of the technology President Nicholas used in the first game to perform cyber attacks against the USA, and similar attacks also occur in this game. Douglas Shetland will use these algorithms to organize troops on the ground. Every man has simple orders that he follows, but that man has no idea what the other people's orders are. In other terms, each individual is a cog in the machine, and no cog ever knows what the cog next to him does, or what the machine's purpose is. Truth be told, while I hold a rudimentary understanding of what chaos theory really is, I'm not sure the developers understood the concept any better. The game wants me to understand that chaos theory just helps organize soldiers by compartmentalizing a mission into individual tasks and then allocating these tasks to certain people. In reality, chaos theory is much more than that. Whatever the case may be, at least the game introduced me to a new and exciting scientific area and graciously provided me with food for thought.